Drummers Against Implied Timekeeping, Recording Observations. I've been in the middle of recording an album with an R&B singer, and I just want to share with you some of the things that have been coming up because I think it'll be fun and it'll give you a lot of information. This particular project came about as everyone was working in other things, but we came together, and some of the music was already done, and some of the music is done in a collaborative sort of way. And I want to give you a general rule of thumb for those drummers who have not recorded many things, or you've only recorded with the one band you've been with. Because if you're playing a long time, like I have, you're playing a lot of different things. I have recorded, I can't tell you how many different situations and different styles, a lot. But I want to give you kind of my observations on this particular one and how it translates generally, all right? Now, there are exceptions to the rule, no question about it. But I found that if you stay with what I'm telling you, you'll be all right. And the one thing I think is important, especially if the songs have already been written and you're not writing together, is to try think of ways when you play your beat to whatever's been written, of play the beat and then try to think of ways of taking notes out. Now that's difficult. It takes time to find out where you can get space in the structure of the tune. And this is something that takes time, but I want you to look for it. You'll lay down a beat on any song. Let's say it's a pop song, and you might play the eighth notes. Nothing wrong, but I want you to start thinking in terms of, that sounds fine, but where do I take notes out? I'm just using this as an example, but the point I want you to understand is by taking notes out, I want you to look at music or the drum parts that you're playing in terms of the overall space you can create. Now, if the engineer, producer, or whatever the situation is on the song allows for more drumming things to go on, definitely you should do that. But the name of the game, if you're a timekeeper for the recording, and this would be more, as I say, for pop music, light jazz, smooth jazz, fusion sort of things, as you get into heavier music, even more so, because there's a cacophony of sound going on, especially with metal. Or, I can't say speed metal because a lot of times you're playing blast beats, but I want you to think in terms of where you can pull the notes. That's the best way I can describe it. Then add accordingly in specific places where it's definitely needed. Don't just throw all the notes into the whole pie and that's it. And the reason I say that is the pulse increases when you're taking the notes out. All right? As a general rule of thumb, and that includes for speed metal, you want to develop whatever the pulse is, regardless of its speed, and then add the notes accordingly. Hopefully this is going to translate, because I've found it to be much more effective to find the pulse and work the notes to it, as opposed to just laying the time down, eighth notes or 16th notes, and not addressing the other issues with the other musicians. You're better off finding the quarter, adding the note. Just find the quarter where you can, depending on the speed. If it's super fast, and the quarter is very fast in that case, find where you can pull out and develop that. Because what will happen is the pulse of the tune is better. If you're adding notes at high speed, those notes lose their translation to the recording. You can't catch all those notes. So if you were going to do a fill and you were going pretty fast, I want you to think in terms of a fill, eighth note fills, rather than do a 16th note fill, because there's a lot of notes in there, and it's not going to translate, regardless of the energy of the track. All right? So just think in terms of space. This is something that I think is important. Now, clearly, on the things that I'm teaching, and any of you who have visited my channel, you understand that I'm teaching in pattern forms, which lend itself to open space. And I want you to understand why. Because on a recording, such as the one I'm doing here, it just gives for a scope of sound that could be put in. Now I can add drum things and parts and fills, and it actually enhances the pulse. But if you're throwing all your notes out on the song, hard and laying down time heavy with these notes, all of it, it does not always translate as well as you would think. So just as a rule of thumb, when you listen to anything you're doing with the band that you're doing it with, or several bands depending on the style, I want you to think in terms of when you go to record these things, how to develop this pulse. And in order to do that, where can I take notes out? Now, there are exceptions if you cannot take the notes out, and it's heavy staccato eighths. But even with that said, you want to develop the quarter over that staccato eighth where you can, because it'll strengthen it. So try and think of terms of taking notes out on any track you can, and then adding in where you need to, regardless of what style of music you're playing. And that's why I wanted to share this with you today. There are lots of things that I'm teaching you that playing in pattern form should help that. And those of you who are not familiar with it, I would invite you to kind of join me. All right, so now if you have any questions regarding what I'm talking about, or your particular recording situation, if you haven't been in one or you're about to go into one, just ask me. I'm on twitter.com/drummersagainst or facebook.com/drummersagainst implied timekeeping. You can always ask me in the comments section of YouTube. I'll answer always, as best I can. And welcome to everyone who's coming and visiting for the first time. I have a very deep catalog of things that I'm teaching in the open-handed position, which are to enhance your power, independence, and most importantly, I want your creativity to be enhanced as a drummer, and that's why I'm doing this series. I have very specific things that I'm teaching, and there's a method to my madness, and hopefully you'll see that. And I would like you to subscribe to my channel, because your subscription is the support that I need to continue and the inspiration, and I thank you always. So this is kind of like a bit of a commentary based upon some of the recording things I'm going through right now, but they apply to so many of the other recordings. I wish when I go back and listen to some of the records that I've done, where I could have taken notes out and how they would have sounded. Would the pulse have been enhanced? And that's what I want you to understand when you're playing with the band you're playing with. I want you to play and learn as much as you can with as many notes as you can, but those notes are to be used sparingly, always. All right, so let me know what you think. Let me know your situation, and I'll help you where I can, as best I can. All right, so my best to all of you for looking in, and I'll keep you posted on my recording situation.